7 days from now, the most watched sporting event on the planet begins. 104 matches, 48 nations, 16 cities across 3 countries, the largest World Cup in history. And right now, at this precise moment, with 1 week to go, the organization responsible for delivering that tournament is managing a crisis that has no single face, no single headline, but instead spreads in every direction you look. Geopolitical, financial, diplomatic, and now a threat that no amount of political maneuvering, no FIFA press release, and no last-minute diplomatic summit can negotiate away. Because this threat is not human, it is the weather, and it may be the most dangerous crisis of all. Let's start with what the science is saying, because the numbers are not ambiguous. A landmark study analyzing temperature data across all 16 World Cup host cities found that 14 of those 16 venues are likely to exceed the internationally recognized threshold for dangerous heat stress during the summer months when this tournament is scheduled. Not some venues, 14 out of 16. The threshold in question is a wet bulb globe temperature of 28 degrees Celsius, a measurement that accounts not just for air temperature, but for humidity, wind, and solar radiation combined. Multiple football governing bodies, including the global players' union FIFA Pro, consider that level the point at which matches should be delayed or postponed until conditions become safer for athletes and supporters alike. Below that number, play continues. Above it, people are at serious physical risk. And the research goes further. If this summer runs hotter than average, which climate scientists describe as increasingly likely given the trajectory of global temperatures, as many as 9 host stadiums could exceed that dangerous threshold for half the entire tournament. 4 cities could reach 32 degrees wet bulb globe temperature. At that level, heat exhaustion is not a possibility, it is a probability. But that was only the beginning. If you want to follow every development surrounding this tournament, every crisis, every reversal, every story shaping the 2026 World Cup in real time, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. We are covering every layer, and this one runs very deep. The heat crisis did not arrive without warning. In the summer of 2025, the FIFA Club World Cup was played across American venues as a direct dress rehearsal for this tournament. What it revealed was alarming. FIFA Pro, the global players' union, publicly stated that 2 matches, Paris Saint-Germain versus Atletico Madrid and Chelsea versus Esperance, should have been postponed because temperatures had already exceeded their recommended maximum threshold. Players contacted their national unions during the tournament to express distress about the conditions. The organization's medical experts issued a formal call for FIFA to eliminate midday kickoffs in the hottest cities for the 2026 World Cup entirely. FIFA heard those warnings. It responded by mandating 3-minute cooling breaks per half across all matches, a measure that experts have since described as a sensible start but insufficient for the scale of heat some venues will face. Moving matches away from the hottest afternoon hours helped, but of the 16 host stadiums, only 3, in Dallas, Houston, and Atlanta, have air conditioning. The remaining 13 do not. Miami, Monterey, Philadelphia, Kansas City, Boston, and New York are among the highest-risk venues. No cooling break changes the fundamental reality of sitting in an open stadium in 90 degrees heat with high humidity for 2 or more hours.
One climate scientist from Imperial College London captured the danger with a precision that should stop everyone involved in planning this tournament cold. A 30 Celsius day in dry, breezy conditions, she said, is a completely different physical experience from a 30 Celsius day with high humidity, strong sun, and little wind. Fans, she warned, are at even greater risk than players, because unlike athletes who are surrounded by medical teams throughout the match, supporters in the stands are largely left to manage their own safety. The heat is dangerous for players, but it is potentially life-threatening for tens of thousands of ordinary fans sitting in those same stadiums. And then there is lightning. Because extreme heat is not the only weather threat bearing down on this tournament. American stadiums operate under strict National Weather Service protocols regarding lightning and electrical discharge. If lightning is detected within 8 miles of any venue, play must be immediately suspended. That is not a FIFA rule. That is a legally binding local safety requirement that FIFA has no authority to override. And in a tournament spread across 16 cities, including venues in states that experience frequent summer thunderstorms, New York, New Jersey, Miami, Kansas City, Atlanta, Boston, the statistical likelihood of at least one significant weather delay across 104 matches is not small. It is near certainty. The critical problem is that FIFA has no formal fixed regulation specifying at what point a match is permanently called off rather than simply delayed. The organization says it is ready to apply contingency protocols should extreme weather events occur. But without a clear, pre-established framework, each delay becomes a judgment call. Each judgment call generates uncertainty. In a tournament of this size, with global broadcasters locked into fixed transmission windows, with team travel schedules built around precise recovery times, with hundreds of thousands of fans relying on transportation connections from cities hundreds of miles apart, a chain of weather delays could create a logistical crisis that no contingency plan fully anticipates. One security risk assessment firm formally classified the 2026 FIFA World Cup as a material risk event specifically because of weather volatility. That is the language of insurance actuaries and corporate risk managers. It means this event carries measurable, non-trivial probability of disruption that organizations need to financially plan for. It is not the language anyone uses about a celebration. Subscribe now and stay with us all the way to the final whistle on July 19th. There is no more important or more dramatic tournament in the modern history of this sport, and we are covering every chapter. But the weather crisis does not exist in isolation. It layers on top of everything else this tournament is already carrying, and that layering is what makes the overall situation so genuinely serious. Amnesty International published a 36-page report warning that the 2026 World Cup carries serious risks and consequences for fans, players, journalists, workers, and local communities. It described the tournament as a potential stage for repression and a platform for authoritarian practices. At least 6 people have died in the custody of American immigration enforcement in 2026 alone, with a 7th fatally shot by an off-duty federal agent. Football Supporters Europe called the increasing militarization of police forces in American host cities deeply worrying, and the tournament's own security assessments flagged elevated risk of extremist attacks and civil unrest driven by political tensions surrounding the host nation's immigration policies and the ongoing war with Iran.
Iran itself, a qualified participant whose players earned their place in this tournament through years of competition, remains in a standoff with FIFA over the location of its group stage matches. All 3 are scheduled for American soil. Iran requested relocation to Mexico. FIFA said it was committed to the original schedule. The Players' Union issued a formal reminder of FIFA's responsibility to protect the safety of every participant. And as of this writing, that standoff remains unresolved. The broadcasting crisis adds yet another dimension. India, a nation of 1.5 billion people and one of the fastest-growing football markets on the planet, still had no confirmed broadcast deal as the tournament entered its final week of preparation. China only finalized its agreement in mid-May, weeks later than comparable tournaments. The combined potential audience of nearly 3 billion people in those 2 nations alone was at risk of being locked out of the biggest sporting event in the world, not because of political boycotts or visa restrictions, but because of a commercial dispute over rights fees that FIFA's own pricing strategy had made impossible to bridge.
and connecting all of it, the heat crisis, the geopolitical crisis, the broadcasting dispute, the human rights warnings, the immigration fears, is an institutional failure of imagination that the sport will be reckoning with long after the trophy is lifted. FIFA awarded this tournament to 3 nations nearly a decade ago with a vision of unprecedented commercial scale and global inclusivity. It built a pricing structure that assumed limitless demand. It chose a summer schedule in venues that climate scientists had already flagged as dangerously hot. It signed a hosting agreement that left the safety of international fans subject to the immigration policies of a government that would change dramatically between the moment of signing and the moment of kickoff. And when each of these crises emerged, one by one, then all at once, it responded with the only tool it consistently reaches for: confidence, statements, press releases, reassurances delivered with a smile. What Amnesty International's report described as a human rights crisis in the host nation is real. What climate scientists described as dangerous heat conditions affecting nearly a quarter of all matches is real. What 16,800 fans expressed when they canceled their tickets in a single weekend is real. What Iran's Football Federation communicated when it said its players would not travel to the country that killed their leader is real. The tournament begins in 7 days. In 7 days, Mexico walks out at the Azteca Stadium and history begins. Goals will be scored, moments will be created. Players who have sacrificed everything for this opportunity will finally get their chance on the world's biggest stage. And none of that diminishes what is true at the same time: that the World Cup arriving on June 11th carries more unresolved crises, more unanswered warnings, and more structural vulnerabilities than any tournament this sport has ever held in the modern era. The heat will arrive whether FIFA is ready for it or not. The lightning will not check the match schedule before it strikes. And the fans sitting in those stadiums, the ones who could afford a ticket, who were allowed through the border, who were not too afraid to come, will be sitting in conditions that scientists have explicitly warned could be dangerous. The question that every football fan watching this summer should be asking is not which team will win the World Cup. It is a simpler, more fundamental question. When the warnings were this loud, this early, and this consistent, from climate scientists, from human rights organizations, from players' unions, from security analysts, from fan groups, from elected officials across multiple continents, why was FIFA's answer always the same word? Fine.